上に上がりゃ関係ねえ。Shall we begin?
The winter is coming. I can do this all day.
Tear down this wall.
Ikuzo.
Welcome, dear listeners, to another thrilling episode of the Unscriptify podcast. And thanks for keeping up with us for exactly 100 episodes, of course, powered by Jägermeister. We have the incredible pleasure of welcoming a true modern-day adventurer, someone whose running videos with breathtaking scenery have captured the attention, motivated, and electrified thousands, if not millions, around the world. He turns his passion into a mesmerizing visual spectacle, none other than James Norbury. So fasten your seatbelts, lace your running shoes, and open a treasure trove of awe-inspiring content with us. And James, Ikuzo means let's go. So are you ready to go genuine, uncensored, and unscripted with us today? And thank you for being here.
Wow, guys, that was a hell of an introduction. I'll try and live up to it.
Yeah. High expectations for you in this episode. Listen, it's anniversary, so you got to do your best.
Okay, yeah, I got to do my best. Let's go. Let's roll. I'm ready.
Well, first of all, James, why are you running? And this is the moment where we and our listeners hear your origin story as the runner, as the producer, as the content creator.
Okay, well, I guess, do you want to start with running? Should we start with the running story first?
Whichever one.
So funny enough, I never used to be a runner. I grew up playing team sports. I grew up playing rugby, and then after school, I got very much into skiing, and I was a skier for basically a skier for the last 10 years. And then, as we all know, the COVID lockdown came in 2019, and I went back to England, and we had our hour a day where we were allowed to exercise, and there was nothing else to do. So I started getting into running, and I was just running on the road. I was running little 5Ks and little 10Ks and, kind of working up the distance and started enjoying it. And then when I got back to the Alps, which is where I live in Chamonix, started running on trail, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'd spent a lot of my younger years hiking, and I just had this idea of running in my head that it was this like, I used to hate running when I was younger. I used to hate running long distance. I found it so boring and so tiring. And then I got back to the mountains, and I started, doing some of the hikes I used to do, but just kind of like slowly running. And I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. Yeah, I've kind of never looked back. I mean, I've only really been running seriously for probably 2.5 years. But yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, and it's been, it's a wonderful way of exploring the outdoors, basically, and of getting out, and there's nothing I like more than spending hours and hours kind of exploring a different mountain area or nature, and it's so simple. You can do it anywhere. So yeah. It was kind of an accident, I suppose.
Yeah, it's also kind of adventure, and the concept of adventure means different things to different people. But for you, what does adventure represent on a deeper level, and how has your definition of adventure evolved over the years, as we heard, because you just started running basically 2.5 years ago, like you said, previously?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I remember when I was very, very young, and I grew up, my mother is English and my dad is South African. So I grew up in the British countryside, and we grew up in this tiny little house in the middle of this huge forest, surrounded by like lakes and fields and woodland, and we were basically the only house for kind of probably 5 or 6 miles in any direction. And so I grew up having this very outdoors lifestyle. We lived in this tiny little cottage, and wasn't much indoor space. So I grew up exploring and kind of roaming around these forests and fields and building dens and kind of figuring out life in a kind of organic way like that. And then through my father, we used to visit South Africa every year. And South Africa itself is a very, very different, wild, wonderful, beautiful place in a lot of ways that England isn't. So I think that was another way that I kind of, I suppose, it fostered this idea of exploring and adventuring in a small way as a kid. Like as a kid, an adventure might be, going to a different part of the forest in your back garden that you've not been to before. And yeah, I guess that's the essence of that has stayed the same. I think just the kind of, I guess the sizes of things have got a little bigger. But the essence is still the same. It's going to places that are new, that are uncertain. For me, it's always like a kind of nature focused. I love being in big outdoor spaces. And I've always loved this idea of moving from A to B kind of on your own steam, whether it's cycling or hiking or running, and kind of slowly moving through a landscape. But in terms of what adventure means to me, I think it's the freedom, to be honest. I think it's always been this idea of freedom of movement and of finding new things. And, I'd love even when I was a kid going and, roaming to going on a big walk or a little hike or something and being like, oh, I don't know what's going to be over that hill over there. And, I'm 7 years old, so it probably wasn't anything exciting. but now it's quite exciting. You're like, wow, I wonder if I run over like that side of the mountain range, like what I'll see. And then you find another little spot. So yeah, the concept I think has really stayed the same in many ways.
Yeah, when we are kids, I mean, even something simple as crossing the street and going somewhere for the first time is adventure itself. So do you maybe share this opinion with me that a boundless spirit of adventure resides in all of us, but maybe daily routines, our own laziness, monotony is something that is killing this adventurous spirit all in kids all around the globe?
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know if you, Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker, American motivational speaker, he says that we all have a need for certainty and we have a need for uncertainty. And those two things, change in different people in different doses. Some people need a lot of certainty in their life. For me, that's found in routine in a lot of ways. I have morning routines and work routines and things like that. And I have within reason, like running programs and that kind of stuff. Like I enjoy the routine, but my uncertainty comes from different things especially, when I go out to South Africa and I'll go running in places that I'm completely unfamiliar with. And I love, one of my favorite things is picking different like mountains or trails that I've not run before and exploring them. Where my thoughts on, broader societal values at the moment, I think it's hard to say. I think there is a deep human need for uncertainty and for exploration. I don't think that will ever go away. I hope that never goes away. I mean, it's my mission in life in some ways to try and inspire that in people, to, get people outside and get people exploring and out of their comfort zone. But yeah, I do think we live a more comfortable existence than perhaps we used to, even when I was growing up, and certainly when, my parents are growing up and my grandparents are growing up. I mean, there is a lot more of a comfortable existence that I think can happen now. And maybe that does taint the adventure spirit in some ways. But there are adventures still out there. I do have faith.
But now that you mentioned that you want to inspire people, speak out that, is that why you bring the camera, so to speak, with you, to capture maybe some of that experience that you have hiking, running?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm my passions in life the flavor of them have changed a little bit, but the ingredients kind of are the same. I've loved since I can remember. I've loved being outside. I've loved exploring, and from a very, very young age. I mean, I was 11 when I first, I think, or 10 or 11 when I first picked up a camera and started making movies, like terrible movies, really silly movies, awful movies. and learning to edit and shooting and filming. And I love just documenting stuff. I love telling stories wherever they were. And actually, it was through my business partner and I. We met at school when we were, I think, 10 or 11 years old. And he also was very passionate about making films. And now we run a film production company together, 24, 25 years later, or however long ago that was. Yeah, exactly. But I think for me, like the running and making videos of running and adventuring kind of ticks a few different boxes. I love being outside. As I said, I love running and love exploring. I really, really enjoy making videos and telling these little stories. And it's a wonderful intersection of those two things. And then that coupled with, I truly believe that if nature and being outdoors is incredibly healing, incredibly healing and incredibly positive. And I struggle to imagine anyone that spending a good dose of being outside wouldn't be a benefit to. So when I get messages from people saying like, oh, this made me, this inspired me to go hiking this weekend, or like, I watched this video and now I went for a run. I'm so stoked. Because the fact that just my two little hobbies crossing can have a positive impact on someone's life is a wonderful thing. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be able to do something you enjoy and for it to be well received, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. And tell me this, in your videos, we may notice many spectacular sights and peaks. I think that even mountain goats would give it a second thought to climb that. So, like in one video, one of the recent ones in Wales, when you are on that hill, I don't know where, I forgot.
Yes, but... Crickock.
Oh yeah. What motivates you for such crazy hikes? Is it to create content, need for adrenaline, or something else? I have a list of all the peaks I had conquered. No.
So, I mean, my answer here might surprise you a little bit. Is that I'm actually I'm pretty pragmatic when it comes to risk. Like I live in Chamonix in the French Alps, which is, I mean, it wouldn't be a stretch to say it's the adventure capital of Europe, potentially the adventure capital of the world. I mean, there's a few other places that I think would get a look in there, but like the amount of professional alpinists and skiers and trail runners and climbers that live here is insane, and the level and the insanity of the things that some people are doing is like absolutely out of this world. Like there are people doing the most crazy things in the mountain here, wingsuiting and base jumping and free soloing and like skiing 50-degree couloirs, and it's wild. For me, when I was younger, I think I was, like I think many young men go through this phase where you kind of think you're invincible and you think that bad things aren't going to happen to you. And so you take really, really, really high risks. And it doesn't, yeah, exactly. And it doesn't take long before that catches up with you. And I think, I had a few near misses when I was younger with, avalanches skiing or falls that could have been really bad falls climbing. I now would say that I'm not doing anything that's not within like a really comfortable risk tolerance. So I know that like that ridge, running along that ridge in Wales that, might look scary. It can look scary. I would never do that if it wasn't like so within my comfort zone. And I felt so confident with it. And, to me, like I'd feel more nervous driving, like the idea of driving through like a busy city for me is way more nerve-wracking than running along a ridge like that, because I run along ridges like that a lot and I'm terrible at driving in the city. So put me in a car. Put me in a car in the middle of like New York and ask me to go from A to B, and you will see me sweat. Whereas put me on a ridge like that, I'm happy, totally fine. But yeah, I it's definitely not an adrenaline thing. You know, I enjoy the focus that comes with that sort of stuff. I you know, especially with, you know, if I'm just skiing difficult things, or I'm running difficult things, or climbing, I love the level of focus, like this kind of flow state that you get into where you really, really have to switch on. And I think that's what I'm after. And I'm definitely not like after the kind of like adrenaline rush that I think maybe some people would imagine. And funnily enough, you know, I only ever fall when I'm running easy trail. When I'm running these like super technical, really, really hard, like knife edge trails, footwork is always perfect because you're like so focused. Yeah. And then I'll be running like my home's trail, and I'm running and I'm looking around, and I'll just fall over. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, you definitely did. And I think that maybe the next viral video that we will see from you is driving through Mumbai. So that will be sight.
I can do it. I literally can do it. And do you know what's funny is it's really funny that you mentioned Mumbai. So one of my friend's cousins is from Mumbai, and he came here literally this summer, and we took him on a really easy hike, and whoa, he hated it. It was like hated it. And we had this exact conversation where he was like, dude, put me in the car in the middle of Mumbai and I'm happy. And I was like, fuck, put me in the car in the middle of Mumbai and you'll see me sweat.
Well, he probably will stop from all the fresh air in the Alps.
Yeah, exactly. got head rush.
But I mean, listening to you speak, I have two friends that are alpinists, and you know, they've been mountain climbing here in Montenegro, and at some places that I would dare exactly to go. But whenever I was asking them why do they enjoy it, you know, just out of curiosity, one of those friends said to me, you know, I just like the feeling of victory that presents the achievement of me getting there. Is that something? There's something like that for you, or do you see it that way? Like almost a personal conquering.
I think I actually have quite a different perspective on this than a lot of people I speak to, and it's part of the reason why I don't really race very much. Not because I think years ago, and especially as I said, I used to play a lot of competitive sport, and I used to play rugby to a reasonably high level, and competed like, you know, I was playing rugby like 4 or 5 times a week, and it consumed my life for a lot of years. And I got so caught up in this in the competitiveness of it, and you know, the drive to win and the drive to, you know, conquer, as you might say, and that hasn't come through into my running in the same way, and I think partly it's because I don't want to like taint this like pure experience with this idea of like competition or like conquering or anything like that. You know, there's obviously a lovely feeling when you set your mind on a project and you achieve that, you know, whether that's, all right, I want to try and get to the top, you know, and I do this all the time. I'm like, oh, I wonder if I can beat my record up to the top of this random hill, you know, and I will do that, and you know, I get kicks out of that. But I do think that I'm motivated more by the experience, motivated more by the feeling, you know, the feeling of being in tune with your body and feeling fit and feeling, you know, like every single cell is coming alive when you're running these particular routes, and feeling like moving through nature and being outdoors. that to me is so much more of an important thing than the kind of competitive element to it, and the kind of the overcoming of, you know, the kind of, I suppose, the conquering, as you put it. And it's, as I said, it's part of the reason I don't race very much. Or when I do race, I haven't raced yet where I've really been that motivated about how I do in the race. I've just really enjoyed the race, you know, and I love the people you meet and the social aspect of it. And maybe, you know, this isn't to say I might change my mind, and, you know, maybe when we talk again, I'll be like, I'm racing. But no, for me, I think the thing I do love has always been the kind of purity of the experience, and the movement and the being outdoors. And, you know, there's a few projects that I really want to do. There's a project here that I want to do. I want to try and go from my front door to the summit of Mont Blanc and back to my front door in a day, which is going to be a pretty tall order. If I do it, I think I'll be really, really stoked. If I do it and I don't make it, I think I'll be not quite as stoked, but I'll still be pretty happy. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one, and it's a journey within myself in a lot of ways, because I think that a little bit of that competitive spirit can be healthy, but I try and steer away from this idea of like conquering any mountains or conquering myself, because, you know, I think ultimately, like, that kind of sometimes makes a bit of a black and white picture, like you either conquer it or you fail. And I don't know, it's not really the dialogue I buy into so much anymore.
Wow, so you're not for capitalism?
Not really, man. I mean, geez, you should talk to my girlfriend. She's very she's a big environmentalist, and incredibly. Hey,
that is cool.
She's yeah. So you know, I'm you know, I wouldn't say I'm anti-capitalist, but I do like the idea of you know, taking a little bit more of a gentle approach to life sometimes.
I love how things can easily turn political. But let me ask you.
yeah. There we are.
But let me ask you, of all the kilometers you covered, which track would you consider the toughest, most demanding, most challenging? Maybe label it as your battle of marathon.
My hardest kilometer, that's easy. So I had, okay, there's a couple. So the first one, I think was when I was 18. I did my first big hike. I did a 55-mile hike, in like, I think it was 36 hours or something. You know, we had a stop overnight. And I remember on the second day, it was so hot. It was so hot, and we ran out of water. And the blisters on my feet were horrific. I remember my right foot, I remember bleeding. And I remember taking off my boot at one point and taking off my sock. This is gross, so I don't know, you're going to want to hear this. It's like all the skin on my right foot just came off with my sock.
Wow.
It was awful. And I remember being like, nearly throwing up. And yeah, the last like 15K of that hike were miserable. Yeah. And then the other one was probably last year. A friend of me and I, we ran the length of Cape Town, of the Cape Town Peninsula. So we started at Cape Point, which is the most southwesterly point on the African continent. We ran 85K back to the town, back to the city, across this like beautiful mountain range and the trails, and yeah, it was absolutely stunning. But the problem was with this is that I hadn't been trail running for very long. I'd never run more than about 20K in a day before. And I kind of went for a bit of a Hail Mary and was like, I'll be able to do this. Let's just give it a go. Like, how hard can it be? And bit off a little more than I could chew. And the last, so you ran 75K across the peninsula. And then the last 10K, you climb Table Mountain from the back, go over Table Mountain and then descend into the town. And that ascent up Table Mountain when I was 75 kilometers in and in completely uncharted territory, I'd never run even close to this before, was a pretty dark ascent. And it was getting dark as well, so the head torches were on, and I was just like trudging slowly up this route, 800-meter climb, hating my life. But then it's peaks and troughs, like you go through these. I had it in a race I did recently. You go through these kind of dark moments where you're really, really bleak, and then half an hour later, everything's okay again, and the sun comes out, and you're running along, and you're like, "Oh, it's the best day of my life. I love this!" Like, and the human mind just forgets about it very quickly. I imagine if you asked me in the moment on these big runs, I'd be like, "Oh, it sucked. I hated it." I was hiking in Dartmoor the other day, and we hiked for 16 hours in the rain. 16 hours in the rain the whole day. And I remember at the time being like, this sucks. I'm never doing this again. This is rubbish. I hate this. And then the next day I was like, that was great. What a wonderful weekend. So I think someone said to me, the best trail runners are the best trail runners. Oh, the best. Someone said to me, the best trail runners are the ones with the worst memories. And I think that's pretty true.
All right. Well, listen, if by any chance Bear Grylls would listen to this episode, he has a summary for one of his future episodes with those two stories to the end.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Thanks, Pat. I'll wait to hear from you.
Would you ever dare on the Everest?
Whatever, what, sorry?
Would you ever dare to try Mount Everest, maybe?
The only reason I would prefer to try a different mountain to Mount Everest, I would love to try a high alpine Himalayan mountain. There's a few in the Himalayas. I've been to the Himalayas twice. And there's a few. Yeah, 2012 I went to the Himalayas, and 2018 I went to the Himalayas. One of my favorite places in the world. And there's some incredible mountains that I would love to climb there. The only reason I think, and as I said, I always leave myself freedom to change my mind, and maybe I will change my mind one day. But at the moment, the reason why I would maybe opt to do a different mountain rather than Everest is purely for the fact that Everest gets so much footfall every year. And you see those videos of people literally queuing for the summit of Everest, and the impact, the impact on nature aside from that, I'll leave people to make their own decisions on whether that's okay or not in the world of mountain climbing and safety in nature. I just think to me, part of the experience in nature is being away from crowds of people. And I always think this whenever I'm doing anything in the outdoors, like there's something about enjoying nature as a solitary thing or with a few people and not being with a big crowd that makes it so special. So would I try a big Himalayan peak? Absolutely. I would love to. It's definitely on the bucket list. It's, part of the reason why I want to get more into alpinism is to be able to do more of these big Himalayan peaks. Would it be Everest? Possibly not, purely because of the crowds. And also, I don't think I necessarily need to scratch the itch of being like highest mountain in the world. I think, I almost think it's cooler to be like, oh, I did, the 9th highest mountain in the world that no one knows about. And, it's kind of like a bit more of a rogue adventure. Or to do, I've got a friend of mine, he's climbed a few peaks that are nameless peaks. I'm like, that's awesome. Like climbing a peak that no one's heard of. I love that.
And then after you, even better.
Yeah. No, I'd name it something ridiculous. I'd name it after a Lord of the Rings character or something. I'd be like, this peak is called Frodo Baggins.
Oh, maybe Frodo's throw.
Yeah. Exactly.
Great place to throw the One Ring. In Montenegro, one of the highest peaks, you would literally translate it to the name of the man and ship. Ship of Bobo. Ship of Bobo. If you want to play. Yeah. And the second highest of the Sava ship. Yeah. Yeah, but you mentioned Lord of the Rings, and your videos seems to be heavily influenced by cinema and film music, which obviously is connected with your other profession, with producing and filmmaking. But particularly, Lord of the Rings are present on your videos on Instagram.
Absolutely.
In the moment of action, which song do you hope will come up, or do you just go with the shuffle? And when you're on that last breath, what song always pumps you up for an extra mile to go plus ultra?
That's a great question. Great question. Okay, so there's a couple. I mean, if I'm wanting to go like Super Saiyan, then the song, do you know the track that plays when they're running through Moria or escaping the Balrog, the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, and it's like the one that literally is like
yeah.
That's an absolute banger. Obviously the Charger of the Rohirrim, the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. That's an absolute stormer. If either of those come on, no matter what kind of run I'm doing, no matter whether I'm doing like a slow run or a tempo run, I'm automatically like fifth gear, full send, right until my lungs rip. It's kind of the dangerous thing about having cinema tracks in your running playlist is they kind of end up dictating how you run.
Yeah, but imagine one that is great for the playlist is called Funeral of Theodred. But the name
that's great.
You are running, that's
that's it. That's a great track. The Rohan the Edoras tracks are wonderful. I mean, Howard Shore is just an unbelievable composer. But I'm gonna actually release my Spotify playlist soon because a lot of people have been asking me for it. And it's got some real crackers in there. I mean, Last of the Mohicans is in there. Some good songs from it's a great song. The one where he's running through the forest. Lord of the Rings is in there. There's The Dark Knight. Man of Steel. There's some absolute bangers. I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah, and I got to send my Vegeta video to him. Yeah. It's epic for motivation. At least people say in the comments. I don't know. That's it for me. So far. Yeah, but before we wrap up, it's really enjoyable talk and hearing your British accent is really a spice to all of this. But especially with our brute Slovenian accents. But
I love the Slovenian accent.
Yeah, not Slovenian, but Slavic. Yeah, and before we wrap up, as I said, we have a little tradition where we say a quote on our Montenegrin language and translate it to English. And I picked a quote from our novelist, award-winning novelist, Meša Selimović. And he said in our language, ni za jednu životnu stazu ne postoji vodič. Svaka je neispitana, neponovljiva. Zato je u životu avantura pravilo, a ne izuzetak. And translated to English, it would be, there is no guide for any life's path. Each one is untested, unrepeatable. That's why adventure is the rule in life, not the exception. And I think you will really like this.
I really love that.
Yeah.
Really, really love that. I couldn't agree more. I think it's a wonderful thing that we're all carving our own little way in the world. I'm gonna give you a quote back, and I don't know the exact wording of this quote or where I heard it from. But it was a little lesson that I read at some point, which was about when you reach, I'm sure you've reached a point many times in life, and I know how I have, where you have several different options before you, maybe you have 2 different options before you, and you stress and think and overthink and overanalyze which one of those you should choose. And there's 2 things that really helped that for me, because I used to really, really overthink about certain things in my life. And the first, we all do. And the first thing is you'll never know the result of the choice that you don't take. You'll never know. So you have to, no matter what choice you take, you have to have a process of letting go. And this happens a lot with mountain climbing in particular, because a lot of the time you're making decisions on, should I keep going to the top and risk something bad happening, or should I turn back? And if you turn back, you'll never know whether that was the right call or not, because you'll never know the result of what would have happened if you'd pushed on. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. And the second is, we think that our choices in life, and we think that these big choices that we face in life sometimes are the things that make the most difference in our life and the things that move the needle the most. But actually, and this is something I do believe, it's some of the biggest things that happen, some of the biggest things that affect your life, you have no control over whatsoever. There are things that happen randomly. There's sliding door moments where you meet someone that you wouldn't have met if you'd have got the next train, or a job that you pick up because you spoke to someone in a bar that recommended you to somebody. Those are the small little idiosyncrasies that I think we miss, that I think have the biggest impact on our life. And the philosophy that I've kind of tried to live by is, rather than stressing and overthinking too much about the various decisions, rather try and focus on navigating everything with the same kind of positivity and the same mindset, so that it doesn't matter whether you choose A or B, because you'll make the best of either of those scenarios, and you'll never know what will happen to the one that you didn't choose anyway. And I suppose in some ways that's adventuring, and it kind of links us back to what we spoke about at the beginning of the conversation, is that we do all have this need for certainty in life. And I think that's the need for certainty can often be the thing that causes us stress and anxiety.
We stay genuine, uncensored and unscripted, and we always will, as we have to order our usual. Share us and subscribe us, and stay tuned until the next Wednesday. Ikuzo!